Hi Booktopians, I'm Amelia. Today, Reynold Poernomo and I will be talking about the dessert game. Welcome, Reynold.
Hey Booktopians, how are you all? Hope you're well.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We can't wait to get into the conversation around your new book. So I suppose one thing that caught my eye when I did find out about this cookbook was that the legend Gordon Ramsay has some thoughts around the cookbook. How does it feel to have someone such, high profile as Gordon Ramsay say that your debut cookbook has something for everyone?
Well, actually, there's a little story behind that first. I was so scared because I got a message back from the publishers, like they don't have contacts for Gordon. I was like, oh, okay, I don't know who else to put on, to be honest. So I got Melissa, I got her kind words, and then on Instagram, I was like, maybe I should just DM him and give it a shot. I was like, oh no, he follows me. Does he? Is he gonna reply? He's a busy man. So he actually replied 5 minutes later, and I was stunned, and it was very humble, very kind. He was more than happy to, get the words in. Sent him the copy of the, ebook copy, and then actually it seems like, I hope at least, that he's gone through a few of the recipes and dishes, because there definitely is something for everyone. Recipes, like I said, from chapter 1, I mean, the first recipe is a brownie. And there are so many different ways that you can make a perfect brownie. Sure, you can just keep it plain Jane and simple without any fillings, but you can change the sugar, change the composition of how much chocolate you put in, as well as the fillings like dried fruits and nuts. And that is kind of the reason why I want to create this book, is like you can change something so simple and so basic and make it into something a bit more of your own.
So you share your childhood love of chocolate milkshakes along with other personal stories within your cookbook. How do you view chocolate, just as one thing we can pick, as an example to pursue new flavor combinations?
Well, chocolate is like the pillar of all desserts, or most of desserts. Growing up, like that little photo of me having little, sitting on a detergent bottle, and then sipping on chocolate milkshake in my parents' restaurant back in the days. I actually am not a big fan, at least now, to have chocolate on its own. So I don't want people to get it wrong. I don't like things where too sweet, too rich. Well, a lot of people are like, what do you mean? You're a dessert guy. I'm not a dessert eater. I'm not. I'm a fiend for like thick shake, milkshakes, ice cream. I love dairy, dilute the chocolate a little bit. Yeah, but how I use chocolate in my desserts, I actually now a lot of it is white chocolate. It's the perfect base and foundation in flavoring a lot of your mousses, even a lot of your cakes as well. I use a lot of like a Genoa recipe that utilizes white chocolate. And you can even create like microwave sponges or even sponges by replacing nut paste with chocolate instead, because in a way it is pretty much similar compositions.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear that you chose the most sweetest chocolate form out of the three. I mean, there's so many now. There's
not only
even
just that as well,
strawberry
like
chocolate.
you can yeah, there's a lot of different chocolates now. Like there's actually vegan chocolate, which is really cool, from Barona. I tasted it. It's like very intense and fruity flavor. And also, like what I love about white chocolate is, sure, it's the sweetest form, because it's got high amounts of sugar and also milk solids. But when you caramelize things, it doesn't really get that sweet, and it brings out this whole new level of flavor. So I see now there's a lot of like chocolate brands releasing their own gold chocolate, caramelized white chocolate, but I feel like you can make your own by just roasting in the oven. It's so simple. You can take it a bit further than those big brands, and it becomes super, super tasty.
That's some good tips there. That's awesome. In terms of this being your first cookbook, you've divided the dishes across the 3 levels. I suppose obviously the title is that it's a game. So how do you see cooking as a game?
It's all about leveling up. So you've always got to start somewhere, right? Where you're grinding away, figuring out how to work with chocolate, handle chocolate, understanding different kinds of sugars, because now there's like a plethora of like varieties of sugar that's unrefined. And there's literally there's unpotential, there's a lot of potential in tapping into like palm sugar, for example. It's not really widely used in a lot of desserts because it's, it's very hygroscopic, where it absorbs a lot of moisture and it holds a lot of moisture itself. And so I want to kind of change things where, sugars like these unrefined sugars, you can kind of replace with white sugar instead, by just changing and tweaking the recipe a little bit. So it is in a way a game of like going through the recipes, taking out a specific ingredient, replacing it with another. And then that's level one, like getting to understand the basics of that, very simple recipes, and adding a few twists here and there with flavor combinations. And then as you progress to level two, things start to get a bit more different, a bit more difficult and more creative. So when you get to the creative side of things to chapter 3, it's more about the design, the concept, the theme, the story behind it, because that's what makes food really meaningful, especially when you go fine dining. You're paying for an extravagant amount of price, but you're paying a price for a reason. It's not just about the food itself, it's where the food is being sourced, the concept of it, the chef's philosophy, and the story of it all. So it all comes together. It's like going to a theater and you're watching a play. There's a story being told just as much as you would go to a fine dining area or food or a beautiful patisserie. There's always a story to be told, the finesse, the skills, and there's a whole bunch of layers. So in a way, it is a game of like, starting out as a noob, where as a regular home cook, you're cooking for fun as a hobby. And then when you get more serious, it gets more creative and a lot more fun, and you can storytell through food.
Yeah, that definitely does level up in terms of what we know, obviously, of all your recipes and everything you've done so far. So that definitely does, I guess, leave us to expect a lot as sort of the fans. In terms of, like you said, the level 2 aspect, with level 1 being sort of a place where you can get started. With level 2, I think you described that as being sort of the place for cooking fanatics. So I'm curious, how do you define a cooking fanatic?
Someone that's obsessed in trying something new. I think that's definitely where you can be a regular home bake and just like do the same things over and over again, go back to the classics. But if you want to challenge yourself, that's where you become a cooking fanatic. Try something else new, something else different. And a lot of people will kind of like they get a bit shy, I guess, and scared to try my recipes, or like, oh, your book's gonna be too difficult for me to cook. No, it's not. It won't be, because once you go through chapter 1, chapter 2 will be a breeze, and then and so on and so on. It just takes time, a little bit more time. Let me just go like show a recipe from chapter 2, for example, because it shouldn't be something that's intimidating. For example, chapter 1, I've got like a super basic tart, but then when you work on to chapter 2, it's about designing the tart and the flavor and the layers of it all. So this is one of my favorite tarts. So
Yeah,
this one
that's
is
so
a
beautiful.
raspberry rose tart. And yeah, it's just being able to change the flavor of the actual pastry shell itself. It's made it with, blended with some Earl Grey tea. And you work with those floral flavors of strawberry, vibrant red of the raspberry, and the tartness of that. And then when you cut through it, you get different textures, different flavors, and colors coming out of it.
That's so awesome. I would love to be able to start on level 1 and work myself up to level 2. I suppose for those people who are your fans, they probably do see themselves as more of the cooking fanatics. So I suppose that's where level 3 is the ultimate level in the case of the 3 levels you've given the readers. So in terms of that level, I see that as, you're quite bold to hand over the keys to some of your signature dishes in that final level. Which of those recipes do you rate, in your humble opinion, as the greatest challenge for those who are cooking at home?
Okay, so when it comes to a classic, I would say a classic is something that you have to try and master. And for me, I know it may seem simple, but this I actually before I did the book, it took me about like 10 years. No, it's about 10 years later, I haven't tried this dish. And I had to try it again and again and again to put it into my book because I perfected it 10 years ago. I needed to perfect it again. Um, this is like my version of a creme caramel. I loved it when I was doing the shoot. When I popped it out of that mold, I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And tasting it and everything and just getting that right texture. So it's finding that comfort of balance of knowing when things are done and perfect. So making sure your foundation is solid. And then when you work on to chapter 3, now this where it becomes a bit more complex and abstract and a bit more artsy, you can say. One of my favorites, so I've got white noise, which would be from MasterChef. I've got it in this book. I would say one of the more difficult ones, which takes a bit of time, is a concept around purple. So this dish right here. So it's a
Yeah,
plated
that's so
dessert,
nice.
and I'll teach you how to canal, how to create, build it all together. And all these recipes, like my mom was telling me, are these real? I was like, yeah. It's like, why would you do that? I was like, well, because I want this to be a timeless book. I want people to come back to this book, rely on this book and learn from it and be able to kind of pass it on and expand, everyone's knowledge in cooking, because it's all about teaching each other.
Yeah, obviously family is key in your story, and you've got some great teachers in your life, and that is interesting to hear that your mum was sort of
She's very
questioning, I
secretive.
suppose. She wanted to keep those secrets for the next
Like, these are
generation,
my
but
recipes though.
you can't just hand them over in a book. But look, obviously, as fans and followers of your work, I can assure you that everyone will do their best to work their magic, their Reynold tricks at home, and I can imagine that that's going to be very exciting for a lot of people at home to have those recipes, I suppose, to look up to, and like you say, sort of work through the levels, and I suppose with level 1 going back to where it all begins, is there a period of time that someone might want to spend, like working their way through that level? Would it be a few weeks, or would it be a few years to get comfortable, or would you encourage them to push on to level 2 and 3?
If someone is working throughout level 1, if you're really that much of a fanatic, you've got all the equipment, you've got your time, probably give you a solid 2 weeks. That's plenty of time, because it goes through, let's say, first one is like easy baked stuff like fast cheesecake, creme caramel, and brownies, etc. And then when you go towards the end of chapter 1, kind of show a little bit more of a plated dessert. So you kind of get comfortable to the next chapter and so on and so on. It's a very simple it's very simple in a way where I kind of show how a plated dessert can be very easy to do. So this one here is like wine and grapes. And it's a concept around grapes itself, of verjus, wine, putting all together into one little bowl. And you don't have to have a fancy plate to make it look pretty. You can put it in anything.
Yeah, obviously those photos in the book are spectacular. So I did want to ask about that sort of behind the scenes side of it. Can you talk us through the process of making your first cookbook? How long would it have taken you? What was involved to get those creations photo ready? You mentioned the creme caramel moment of it, like holding your breath and all of that.
The first half of the shoot was pretty good. So actually writing up the book first took me about like 2 weeks. I just wanted to smash it out, but it was difficult in a way because in the restaurant, we don't really kind of keep like, hey, this is the book, or like this is the recipe book with this dish. It's more of like a recipe book with no method. It's just ingredients and temperatures, because then I would want my chefs to kind of show them the process and them to teach the other chefs as well, and so on and so on. It is more of like a bible of component recipes. So you're putting like a jigsaw puzzle. So whenever we change the menu, let's use this, and put it together. So it was kind of difficult to kind of round everything together and kind of scale it down or scale it up, and trying to get into the right portion serving. And so yeah, that took quite a while, and testing as well. And then first half of the shoot was pretty all right. I kind of spread myself out, getting my chefs do all the hard work, and going for the easy stuff a little bit, and then try to get all the hard work out, like all the chapter 3s out first as possible. And then second half of the shoot was really hard because there was a few miscommunications, and then there was a few dishes that failed, and I had to redo them. And actually one of the dishes that I don't want to give it too much, but like I was actually lacking one dish because I scrapped one. I didn't like it, and I wanted to make a new one. And I thought to myself, crap, what do I do? Okay, I actually made this dish not too long ago. So since I've already got white noise, I've got a black concept in there, I've got purple in there, a green one in there. So I was like, okay, well, let's just do red. And the next one I did was called Red Veil. And this is that dish right there. And that was made literally on the spot. I was freaking out with my chef. I was like, we're gonna get this again, this, but make sure everything's ready. And yeah, it turned out pretty well. So there was some hiccups here and there.
That's all right. That's obviously expected, and it's the process. And talk about winging it at the next level there with pulling out red out of nowhere. Yeah. That's awesome. So I suppose for those who have not had the pleasure of visiting Koi Dessert Bar, which is obviously your family's pride and joy, and there's 2 locations, which recipe in the book is the easiest, would you say, for people to replicate at home?
From Koi, trying to think. We do, so chapter 2 we do a little bit more of like jar desserts, so in a way that kind of like trifle. So those ones will be a little bit more easier, I would say. Without molds and everything, yeah, it would definitely be one of our jar desserts, and one of the easiest jar dessert and most, I would say, delicious. You can have this for breakfast if you want. It's sort of healthy, is the watermelon jar. So this is one of our best sellers actually, and it's got chia seeds, you got a berry crunch made jelly, got watermelon bits, you've also got like a nice kind of like a rose cream with it as well. It's just easy dish to kind of tuck in, put everything all into a jar or into a cup or a bowl, have it the next day. Or yeah, that's one of the dishes that you can definitely do at home.
Yeah, that definitely does seem in the ballpark for most people, I would say.
Yeah,
you can use whatever you've got.
Trifle.
That's it. Yeah, it's very, very cute presented in real life, I can tell you. But yeah, as sort of the champion of substitutions, ingredient changes, coming up with recipes on the fly as you do. I suppose one of my experiences with Koi is that I actually visited your store at Ride in the lead up to finding out that I actually can't have gluten anymore. So I found out that I'm a celiac earlier in the year. But before I got that confirmation, I made it my mission, and my mum and dad dragged them along to Koi at Ride. And so while I was there and I got to try all of the desserts, we discovered that a lot of your cakes that you make are made from almond meal, of all things. So not plain flour, but almond meal.
Well, not just almond meal. We actually make our own gluten-free flour blend, and it's like a little secret recipe. So that's about like 95% of our cakes are gluten-free.
Yeah, that's awesome. And in terms of working with these sort of, I say, alternative ingredients, even though they're not new, but for some people they may, and especially in sort of the baking world, how do you navigate using those sort of materials that don't, act the sort of way you expect?
It's not easy. A lot of trial and error, that's for sure. So we tried out a few gluten-free blends from other companies, outsource it, and it was always lacking. It's very dry. It doesn't have the same elasticity as gluten does. And so we're trying to create our own blend by asking a lot of friends. Well, my mom did actually. She asked one of our family friends who's a pastry chef, and he told us one of his gluten-free recipes, flour blend, and then we added a few things here and there by understanding different compositions. So by using alternate flours and stuff like that, adding out elasticity by like a little secret ingredient, blah, blah, blah. And it took a lot of, I think like about 3-4 years of development before we got our gluten-free blend to be acting as one-to-one to regular flour. So yeah, it's not really much to say, but like whenever you're substituting an ingredient, just make sure that you understand how it works, because not everything is the same. You can't just replace flour with almond meal all the time, because I mean, when you need to make pasta, you need the elasticity and all that stuff. So you just got to make sure, like, you know, what's another grain or kind of sauce that you could make that has that same reactive kind of component.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear your trials and tribulations with gluten-free flours, and yeah, like you said, with the moisture, I suppose there's so many different factors, and I suppose working in an environment like Koi, I suppose people expect, you know, things to be, I'd say, like the same as when they last had it, you know, that regular sort of product. So it's good to hear. It's good to hear you guys have put 4 years of effort into that mastery, which is definitely evident from when I did my visit and I sampled like way too many desserts in one day. I can tell you. It's a big sugar rush, but yeah, my family loved visiting your store. So in terms of the fans and giving them your wisdom and experience into one book, what do you expect that they will learn from the cookbook?
Confidence. I would say I hope, you know, everyone gets to learn a little bit more confidence in cooking. It's for everyone. And there's always room to improve, always room to learn, and not to be intimidated by dishes that look fancy or stunning, because a lot of it is just made from super basic recipes. It's just all about building. It's like there's a lot of, like, for example, one of my signature dishes has like 12 components. It's all 12 broken down little recipes of simple things put together cleverly in a way. And I hope that, you know, people can kind of take away at home is kind of create their own style of desserts.
That's so wonderful. Yeah, they definitely will get that confidence boost, I'm sure. And in terms of life, what's next for Reynold?
Oh, there's actually quite a bit happening, but so got a new koi opening up in December, currently in build. So it'll be a magnificent new store. We're actually about to finalize Melbourne, but that's, yeah, still to be confirmed because it takes a bit of time. Other than that, I've actually been thinking about writing another book, but yeah, we'll see where this one takes me first. So no rush there. And other than that, still in a work in progress of hoping to create a proven concept for a show. But yeah, that's it for me at the moment, and hoping to get out of here and travel a little bit, film a few places overseas, and get to share exciting foods and discover a few, you know, find different gems around across the world.
Sounds like incredibly exciting times for you. So we wish you the best with all of that. And thank you so much for your time today, Reynold. It was great to learn more about food and how you sort of think about it as well. If you're hungry like me, you can order your very own copy of Reynold's debut cookbook, The Dessert Game, now on booktopia.com.au. Thank you so much for watching, and bye, Booktopians.
Thank you guys. Thanks, Booktopians.